We have developed such a framework for analysis. By the way, it is already patented. In it, we go through different levels. The transformation starts with the category of systems thinking, lean, theory of constraints, and then moves on to what is connected to what's in people's minds. And only then can we talk about something. And that is, until we carry out the transformation of the company through these levels, each of which has certain connectors, which I will explain later if we have time. And only then can we talk about any kind of AI. And until I did this, until I changed my approach to implementation, nothing worked out for me. So we were implementing something, but some people didn't understand why, and so on. And it didn't work. It either stalled or... I'll briefly explain what each stage is about. Because there are many such conceptual entities there, without which we simply won't be able to move forward. What is systems thinking? Any organization, business, or living organism is not just a collection of separate parts, but a single interconnected system. We are used to looking at the events happening around us. We look at what happened there. A president was elected, a war started, and we look at events. At most, we're used to looking at just one or two facts that influence these events. We analyze things at the level of events. That's how we were taught in school. Study well, and you'll be rich. In other words, that's how we usually think. People think linearly, or they might think magically. They might say, oh, let's thank the universe, breathe with our womb, or something else. Spit even. And that's even people who are educated. Systems thinking says that any fact of reality that exists today, any fact of reality is in a complex cause and effect relationship with other facts. And if we see this fact, it always has one, a cause. And that cause has another cause. There are root causes, the so-called leverage points, meaning something you can influence and it changes the situation significantly. The problem is almost never found in a single person or department. It's in the architecture of the system. That is, the key concept of systems thinking is the emergent effect. Any system that exists does not depend on just one thing. It depends on the sum of the dependencies between its elements. For example, it's a bit of a complicated story, but in short, take the human body. There are many different organs. We can, in principle, this organism does not depend on just one thing, on the heart or the brain or the kidneys. It depends on everything inside it, not on any one specific thing. We are used to focusing on just one thing and trying to influence it during this automation process. We look at some facts, something on the side, something visible. Bad managers, everyone is dumb there, or as Roma said, which I liked, Siglo opens in the morning. Oh, idiots, and in the end, oh, idiots. So we look at two events, idiots there, idiots here. We don't see what emergent effects are at work. So, an anthill, one ant doesn't plan a complex system. These ants just interact with each other, and the system works based on emergent behavior. That is, there is no architect, orchestrator, director, or CEO, but the system works great. People can't do that, because people are like a flock of birds. When birds fly, there's a very popular theory now. Again, Andri, who studies swarm intelligence or swarm management models, talks about this. When birds fly, they don't communicate over the radio like go left or go right. They do everything precisely in sync and so on. This is management through the emergent effect of the system. That's a good example. Each individual official who has talked to officials without hitting them. When you talk to them individually, they're golden people, they have families, kids, basically, they're not obsessed with money and so on. So there's really no point in trying to influence one specific Vasil Petrovich. But when there are 150 officials in the system, they create the emergent behavior of the system. That is, the system starts working in a completely different way. And we can't do it through just one Vasil Petrovich or even two more. We have to influence the system at the emergent level. Well, it's the same with business and so on. You know the story about when, back in the day, they exterminated sparrows in China? There is a system that operates at the level of emergent effects. Some guys got together and said, let's do it. Sparrows eat wheat. Well, what did they eat anyway? Wheat, right? Linear thinking. Rice, right? Linear thinking. Let's kill all the sparrows and there will be no problem, right? Well, let's hire a good specialist and he'll solve everything for us now. A wizard on a blue helicopter, right? So what do? They kill all the sparrows. The sparrows in the system, what did they do? They ate locusts. And the locusts devoured the entire harvest. In China, there was a famine of unprecedented scale. All because they used linear thinking instead of systemic thinking. They didn't understand how the system works emergently. In short, it's the same story in business. Non-linear causes and effects can be very widely separated in time. We can be doing something and then suddenly, out of nowhere, something happens. Something hits you. How is that possible? Out of nowhere, that's an emergence. Everything seemed fine. But in reality, the system also has a cumulative effect. Accordingly, there are certain categories of analysis that we will incorporate into this framework. And accordingly, we analyze the system from the perspective of its emergent behavior. Not from the perspective of a specific person or a specific fact, but in terms of how this system operates as a whole. And as a result, we obtain the key parameters of the system and the so-called architectural flaws. We see that this system cannot function with such an architecture. And only by changing the architecture can we transform the company. And what do you think will happen if you apply AI to a system that has significant architectural flaws? In other words, what does AI do? AI is a technology that amplifies whatever you tell it. If it works, if it takes off, it will simply amplify that system with all its major architectural flaws. And that's where it ends. So what were these guys doing? 95% unsuccessful cases. They were amplifying a system that basically they didn't understand how it worked on the level of emergent effects. The next level is lean. Is anyone familiar with lean? The story goes like this. Maybe someone knows the difference between costs and losses. In lean theory, it's not like something that's just written somewhere. It's not something engraved on a bronze plaque. In lean theory, this is how they see it. There are key concepts. What are costs? Costs are everything that contributes to the creation of value. We can't create value without incurring costs. And waste is that crap that exists in parallel and doesn't contribute to value creation. It's very simple. They say that everything that creates value is great. Everything that doesn't create value is called muda in Japanese. It needs to be eliminated. It's useless. Very often, as I see it, just to get ahead a bit, there aren't many cases, but 10 to 15% of processes are actually losses or muda. That is, they have nothing to do with value creation in the company. They say, let's automate this or that process, like the approval process. For example, document approval in the company. We have an approval process that goes through 4 key people. Automate it. I ask, what is the value of this process for the client? Well, we need it. But can we avoid this process? Well, in principle, basically in the end, we created so-called order rules where everyone approved without formal approval. They just saw at the post-moderation stage that some event had happened, but they observed and controlled it. That is to say, we essentially eliminated and completely removed, cut out the entire process from the system because it failed to generate any meaningful value for the organization. And you simply cannot successfully automate any process if you do not analyze the situation through these specific conceptual categories. It's just impossible. Cream philosophy. Dozens of other philosophies are built on it. Agile, by the way, and all that ethical stuff, they really grew out of it. It's a very important topic and it resonates with what we discussed last time about the environment. There was a great discussion. Do you remember about management? How should tasks be assigned? People need to be told 3 times. What else was there? Repeat it 3 times, set a deadline. And something else. Well, those are some basic management parameters. You know, I always want to say, in all the management books from the 2000s, that's like the foundation. I always want to ask, seriously, do you think this will work? If a person repeats it 3 times, what does lean say? That a mistake is not a person's fault, but a signal of a weak spot in the system or an anomaly. That is, there is a system that operates at an emergent level. We see it, and the mistake is not Vasily Petrovich is an idiot. They are not idiots. It's just that the system works in such a way that a specific person as an element generates such an anomaly. And the task of the system is to make mistakes visible. Early on, quickly, find the root cause and eliminate them. And this, by the way, is what, in my opinion, AI transformation should be engaged in. It should create a system. One that doesn't just amplify everything indiscriminately, but one that can see and improve the system. Describe the key quality indicators. What is good, what is bad, detect mistakes as early as possible, identify the root cause, and turn it into improvement. Here are the types of losses. Overproduction, we start producing too much without understanding why for those who have production. Waiting, any kind of queue. For example, I signed up. I don't remember to whom, but I've already been waiting for 3 days. And in my organization, well, these hotels, apart hotels where I live, any waiting is a loss. Excessive transportation, unnecessary processing, surplus inventory, warehouses. Well, in short, this is all the Toyota methodology, which says there is no just-in-time, no queues, no unnecessary processing. For example, at Porsche until recently. They always had a nice tradition. They would roll out an almost finished car. This is what people who saw it told me, and before it went on sale, they would start touching it up. Like, let's touch up the paint here, fix this spot there, and so on. Toyota says that's impossible. It needs to be planned in advance. So the process is that it should already be ready to go out. In short, without going into detail, the point is that until we approach our business model from the perspective of the system, business architecture, and systemic architectural flaws and losses, then there's no damn reason for us to do anything there for EI. That's what I'm talking about. That's the key idea. This is what we did for the gas station network. We simply took all their processes. We're doing the same thing with these badges now. But they also dream about EI, 300 gas stations. These are processes. This is the so-called flow map, which they have in Lean. The customer drives onto the gas station premises. For the customer, that's fine. It's necessary because there's no other way. They figure out which pump they need. Loss. The customer drives up to the pump. Loss. Basically, if he didn't have to drive up, he wouldn't. If they delivered it to his home, he wouldn't drive up. The customer communicates the value. The customer moves to the payment area, 18 seconds. He walks. The customer waits in line to pay, 180 seconds. Why is he waiting? Why is he standing there? Why are there all these losses? Because that's how the system is designed. Someone once came up with all these copies. Lean says, yes, think about it. Maybe we can eliminate something from this process. Maybe we can improve it. Remove those 180 seconds, because none of that creates value for the customer. And then they say, well, let's automate everything. But they say, what is there to automate? You only have 17%. Processes create value, and the rest, you're just entertaining yourselves. All right, moving on. The theory of constraints. This is a separate theory. If Lean says, like, systematically eliminate every piece of unnecessary waste, carefully identify it, properly classify it, and retain absolutely nothing but exactly what your specific client requires, it is essential for you to understand that they truly know what they need. But the theory of constraints says it a bit differently. They say, well, not exactly like that. Why did I choose this theory? Because when I talk to clients, I would say to them, oh, let's look at the losses. They say, but that's the theory of continuous improvement. We're constantly improving. We don't have time to be continuously improving something. We understand that we need to survive, especially in Ukraine. And the theory of constraints says that, in fact, a loss is essentially a symptom of some problem, is located at the level of system thinking, at the cause and effect relationship at the architectural level. And there is always only one key constraint in a company, and if you solve it, then either you expand it, or if it's impossible or you completely eliminate it, then you don't just improve something somewhere. I don't know, the cleaner used to clean poorly, now she cleans better. For the client, some value was added, but so what? So the theory of constraints says, find the one. A constraint that will have an exponential impact on the result. Just one thing. Push there, remove that. Add what will completely change the course of events in your system, in your architecture. They can be of different types and so on. Bottleneck. I can talk about, see, that's me standing there, so that I could grow with this seedling. It turns out I was looking for the bottleneck in the business system for 4 years. I couldn't find it. I couldn't set up seedling production because it was a startup. I'll be brief. Maybe this is even more valuable than what's next because this is a real case. Seedling production, grafting, rooting, it's a complex technological process. What's happening? The theory of constraints says there are symptoms. Symptoms are always far from the causes, and the causes are always far from the root cause. And what you see in the symptoms, you don't need to solve them, look for the root cause. So if you have bad sales managers, look at why they're bad, why they're not selling well. Maybe the reason is the product, maybe it's marketing, maybe it's the universe, and so on. I had such first-level symptoms. A high percentage of defective seedlings. Well, in short, I invested a certain amount of money there and started growing seedlings. I gathered all the books available on this topic, all the scientific works that existed at the time, and I just took them, read them, and systematized them because I am a scientist by calling. And I understood for myself how the technologies work. There were studies, they were based on facts and so on. I started doing it. I invested a certain amount of money there, hundreds of thousands of dollars, into this production. And what did I get? The first year, my expected conversion rate was, let's say, 70%. The first year I get the result, what do you think it was? 0? 100% of the seedlings died. That is, there was a high defect rate, unstable survival after grafting, unstable volumes, and so on. Terrible quality of the batches. In short, the second year, I draw conclusions. I think, what's going on? Let's try to solve something. I think maybe I don't have a standardized process, so let's standardize everything. I start to describe and standardize. But if your technology is wrong and you standardize it, well, what good will that do? If you have 0, what can you achieve? And then there was my partner. He was obsessed with the production line, always dealing with all the constraints, the losses, telling people to come here, moving all the workers around. And I said, no, I just don't have that much time, right? Employees at the same level perform the operation differently. That is, there's no standardized process. One person cuts this way, another cuts that way, one has a dull knife, another didn't grease it. There's a lack of clear procedures. Basically, these are all the same symptoms, right? I've been doing this for the second year now. Basically, I'm making improvements at the symptom level. What do I get? I get 20%. Great. 20%, but in the business plan, it's 70%. So basically, I'm in the red. Seriously. I'm thinking, damn, how is this even possible? I mean, seriously, I've read every book on this, just all of them in this region. I've traveled here and there. There are competitors, and the problem there is that everyone, even just casually, is making money. It's unclear. I've got 99% and so on. You don't know, you can't figure it out, right? Well, you realize that the business model, somehow it works for them because these people live a really luxurious life. And what about you? You just keep paying extra, raising the village. For 3 years, I've been launching, improving. I just didn't know about the root restrictions back then. Restrictions. And in the third year, what do you think it was? 30%? 30%? So in the fourth year, what did we do? We decided to take a risk and try a completely different technology. Basically, there are 2 technologies for grafting seedlings. Winter and summer. The winter method is when it's dug up, brought indoors, put in refrigerators, and the grafting is done indoors during winter. And then it's taken to the field and planted. And there's the summer method, which is done right in the field. The seedling grows, you cut it, snip. That's how we did it. Snip, but nothing worked. So I called the scientists and said, guys, and they told me, we have a bad climate. This only works in Turkey and Crimea and so on. Well, I believed them like a fool. I decided to check for myself. And we did the grafting in the 4th year, right in the field. And in the field, it turns out to be about 4 times cheaper. That is, you don't have to dig them up, transport them, put them back in the fridge, and so on. And do you know what my success rate was? 90%. 90%. I achieved a 90% conversion rate in the field with 4 times fewer expenses. Root restriction. The next 2 slides, I won't dwell on them here because they are 2 separate theories. We also use them in our process. I'll just briefly say that thorny restrictions, architectural problems, structural issues, and so on, they are all often connected, as in my case, with what's called a paradigm shift. That is, I was in a certain scientific paradigm, reading books, believing in them because that's what I was taught in school. You have to, and the teacher knows best. And until you step out of the paradigm, you won't be able to exponentially change what you want to change. That is, the system can change in a fragmented way, but exponential change only happens by stepping out of the paradigm. Well, Adizes and spiral dynamics are precisely about thinking about mental models, until the owners, CEOs, and so on are ready to think differently. So in order to accept these changes and search, in short, at least within this framework, for them to think, for them to understand where to look, otherwise nothing will work out. No AI will help.